Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beyond the Sideline podcast, a podcast where we talk about the latest sports stories and give our opinions as fans watching our teams play from Beyond the Sideline. As always, my name is Angel with my co host Jake. I, first of all, before this episode starts, want to apologize for the absence since the last episode. That's the elephant in the series of
Everybody's
it,
asking.
it was
Everybody's asking that.
yeah, it's very unfortunate timing. Um, we brought the episode out, came out on a Friday. A few days later, Jake had to go to Henderson, Nevada, to cover the Big West basketball tournament. The week after that was finals, and just last week was spring break. Or not last week, but a couple weeks ago was spring break. So,
It's been
kind
busy. It's been
yeah,
busy
it's
times.
been very busy, but we're back, and we have a lot to cover, especially in terms of the Madness tournament. And before we get into the main tournament as a whole, I wanted to talk about the Big West tournament, cover it. I know our women's teams, UC Santa Barbara, got eliminated in the first round to our rival Cal Poly, but our men's team went all the way to the semifinals, which kind of shocked me a little bit. And they put up a good fight against UC San Diego, who ended up going all the way and playing Michigan as a 12 seed and giving them a run for their money. So, Jake, I wanted to hear your thoughts about the Big West tournament as a whole, what you saw from not only Santa Barbara but other teams that were there.
Yeah. I mean, it was fun to be out in Henderson and see it happen first person. And I think the women's team was so upsetting because they had their troubles in close games throughout this season. They had tough time closing out in games, and Alyssa Marin gave it her absolute all. The
Yeah,
fifth year senior, she put it all out there. She put up over 20 points, and I mean, she was hustling like nobody's business, but in the end, it was just not enough. They never led against Cal Poly. They never led. They were never even tied besides 0-0. And yet it never got out of hand. It was always a 2, 4, 6 point game, but they just couldn't quite get over that hump. So a frustrating one because I think that team could have gone pretty far. And I think
yeah,
they're set up well to win next year with pretty much their entire core returning besides, of course, Alyssa Marin. So excited for them next year. But for the men's side, it was super exciting. This is a team that struggled with consistency all year and could never beat the top teams and took care of business against the bad ones but always struggled against teams that were better than them. And I think that CSU Northridge game was so exciting. In the quarterfinals, they finally beat a team that was better than them. They're the 5 seed. CSU Northridge was just the 4th seed, and they looked great. I mean, everyone was firing on all cylinders. I think it was the best basketball they played all year, and they were healthy. KK Tom was a beast defensively. I think he should be great next year in a similar role as long as he stays healthy. Spawn Swenson tried to carry the team, but in the end, they just totally ran out of steam. And Coach Pasternak said as much in the post-game press conference after that UC San Diego game. They just fell apart. I mean, the second half, they were up by one at
yeah.
halftime, and
First
then
time the whole
their
season.
legs, yeah, and then their legs literally just like they couldn't stand anymore. They were getting out hustled, they were getting outrun, and they ended up going like 5 of 36, I believe it was, from beyond the arc, which is, I mean, it's live and die by the three, and they really, really died by the three. So I think this is such a good learning experience for the Gauchos and Joe Pasternak specifically, because there were a lot of times this season where they really slow played some injuries and were extra careful and didn't really care all too much about the regular season. It was all just, let's make sure we're ready to go for March. And then they were ready to go for March. They were looking great, but because they didn't set themselves up and they had to play 3 games in 3 days, they would have had to play 4 games in 4 days. You just couldn't do that. They just didn't have enough steam for that. So I think that's something that you have to look forward to in future years. You have to be prepared. You got to work harder to get a bye. But then in terms of everyone else, UC San Diego was a joy to watch. They were,
Oh
they
yeah.
were. I thought they could have made. I think they got a terrible matchup against Michigan in
Oh
the
yeah.
first
That's
round
a
because
really bad
obviously
match. matchup.
They were, like UC San Diego runs a small ball lineup, all 1 through 5. Their 5 is a glorified power forward who's like 6'7", 6'8", and you have to go up against two 7-footers in Michigan. It was just a terrible. They still put up a great fight, but I think this was the best Big West in decades, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but the thing is, this being such a big year, next year, everyone's
Yep.
leaving because it was such a
Yep.
good year. UC San Diego just lost their head coach, Eric Olin. He's going to New Mexico and playing in the Mountain West. A lot of their guys are transferring. The Irvine, I believe, has some transfers. CSUN is transferring. Riverside has transferred. So the Big West is going to be shaken up next year,
Yeah.
and that leaves room for the Gauchos to be really good, and they should be, I think, not only a top 4 team, but probably a top 3 team.
I could not agree more. Yeah, I'm glad you bring this point up, Angel, because it's insane how much turnover just in literally the last 2 weeks
Yeah.
since the transfer portal opened. And I really do think top to bottom, this was an incredibly competitive mid-major conference, one of the best this year. I think UC Irvine should have gotten in. They went all the way to the championships and the NITs. I think they totally should have gotten into the NCAA tournament. Like, this was good enough. This was a good enough conference for a two-bid conference this year into the NCAA tournament. But the era that we are in now with NIL and the transfer portal just it's completely blown up the entire thing. I mean, you mentioned, just look at the top 4 teams, the teams that finished ahead of the Gauchos. Obviously, UC San Diego, everybody is either graduated or transferred because their head coaches left. UC Irvine, your top 3 or 4 players all transferred. The 6th man of the year, and obviously Devin Tillis and Ben Loishton, all gone. And then you have CSUN, who loses, Marcus Adams Jr. going to ASU, which, good for him. He's going to be great there. But he leaves, so then everybody else looks around the room and is like, all right, I guess we're just going to blow it up. Their next 2 best players leave as well. At UC Riverside, they had a couple guys transfer out as well. The entire conference completely blown up. And then not next year, but the following year, we're saying goodbye to UC Davis and Hawaii. They're leaving the conference as a whole. So I think it's so upsetting as, members of a mid-major conference. Like, this is the best the Big West has been, certainly in my time here. I genuinely think in the last 10 or 20 years. And immediately it's done. I mean, it's going to be one of the worst conferences in basketball next year, I think. But that opens the door for the Gauchos.
Yeah, and speaking of the Gauchos in the transfer portal, we just got someone from Utah, and I think he's going to be a great addition to this team. We're going to welcome him with open arms. It's going to be great to call his games. Jake, I know you're not going to be here next year to see him, but I'll be able to see at least 1 year that he's here. Obviously, I'm hoping to graduate by next year, so I won't see him if he stays his final year eligible, but Gauchos are losing some people. Ariel Bland, our center off the bench, who did pretty well late in the season. Coach Pasternak kind of experimented with him and Kenny Poto out there on the court at times, which I really like that lineup. But he submitted his name in the transfer portal April 2nd. We're losing our star, Cole Anderson, one of the best three-pointers, if not the best three-pointers in the three-point shooters in the country. He's a grad transfer. Deuce Turner, another grad transfer. Ben Schultzberg, who I thought was going to get a lot of great minutes next year, possibly a starter.
That's the most surprising one by
He's
far.
transferring to Murray State.
Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, the only thing I can think of is Coach Pasternak promised a lot of playing time to ZZ Clark behind Ben Stolzberg and wanted Stolzberg to play a similar role as he did this year, which is just, a bench defense guy in late minutes. And if that's the case, then I understand it from Stolzberg, but I thought he would get increased playing time significantly, if not maybe even a chance to start now and then. So I'm definitely pretty surprised by that. I mean, definitely a lot of pieces are out. I mean, just in terms of who's graduated, and now you look at those transfers, it's going to be a wildly different team next year. I mean, and just, probably your 2 most consistent players all year, and Swenson and Poto graduate. So they're done. uh, you lose so much production, but I think the core is still there enough that you can still be pretty fired up about this
Yeah.
team next year. With Jason Fontenette, I think he's going to be kind of forced to step up and take the probably the biggest role in the entire team. Zion Sensley, I'm really excited for him. I hope he figures it out a little bit more on the defensive end because I think he could be he has the highest ceiling I think out of anybody in maybe the Big West in terms of just he could win Big West Player of the Year next year. And it's in the realm of possibilities. He could also be a total bust. That's also within the realm of possibilities, I think. So he's an exciting prospect. And obviously you have Colin Smith still. I hope everybody stays. Transfer portal obviously still open for a couple of weeks. I think we should be okay, but I'm still excited.
Yeah, I mean, with the transfer portal and NIL deals, it's everything is just unpredictable now in the world of college basketball. But we transition now to the March Madness tournament. We mentioned UC San Diego a little bit. I thought they were going to go to the Sweet 16. I thought they had a
Mm-hmm.
chance, but I mean, there haven't been any Cinderella stories this tournament. I mean, you could say Arkansas was one. They made it to the
Probably the
Sweet
closest.
16 against Texas Tech. They lost by two, I believe. They beat St. John's. But other than that, I mean, it's been the top four seeds all the way. But I mean, rightfully so. These teams are legit. These are the most legit one and two seeds I've seen at least in the last 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, and I mean the numbers back it up, Angel. The just looking at Ken Palm net rankings, you take the average net of all the one and two seeds, by far the largest out of any one and two seed combination ever in the history of the tournament. And just the top four, those four one seeds in Auburn, Florida, Houston, and Duke, who obviously ended up all making the Final Four, they had net rankings that were so above and beyond anyone else. And I mean, Duke and Auburn specifically, who of course ended up both losing, but those two teams specifically had the highest like Ken Palm net ranking ever in college basketball. So it was a crazy crop this year. I don't know if everyone's going crazy and complaining that without the Cinderellas and stuff, but I think this year is kind of just a unique one in that the top teams are so good and there's not a ton of, you know, cohesion throughout the entirety of March Madness. It's just really at the top right now. But I don't know if we're going to see that on a consistent basis forever.
Yeah, I don't think we are either. I think this is just one of those years that, the top teams really have it locked down. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I get, the average fan wants to see the Cinderella story. People wanted to see number 12 McNeese go to the Final Four. People wanted to see Yale and a UC San Diego matchup. But I mean, these top seeds have been really fun to watch too. I mean, the
Yeah,
Duke Houston game was was
unreal.
fantastic. I
Yeah,
mean, I wanted Duke to win that game. They didn't do too well in the final few minutes, but I mean, this Florida Houston game that's going to happen tonight at around 6, it's going to be something of spectacular to watch.
yeah. I mean, and I think that was the hope kind of when you saw the pieces falling into place and the top teams advancing, you figured, all right, even though it was a rather anticlimactic first and second round, it should be that much better of a final couple rounds. And that's totally what it's been so far. The Elite Eight was awesome. I mean, both of those games in the Final Four. Florida's comeback was incredible. Walter Clayton Jr. has been, I
He's a
mean,
stud.
otherworldly. Like, oh my God, he's been. How do you bet against that guy right now? It's crazy. And then I love the Kelvin Sampson and Houston story. I mean, starting from so little, building it up, moving to the Big 12, immediately winning. He seems like such a great guy. I think they're a really fun, and they're just so different. They're just built on, we're going to take things slow and play incredible hard-nosed defense for 40 minutes a night and just see what happens. And to be able to shut down a team like Duke, what they were held for, I think two made field goals in the last 13 minutes of the game or something
Yeah.
insane like that.
Yeah,
Duke,
I think it was one made field goal in the last 10. It might have been two in the last 13.
I mean, that's just insane to do it against one of the best offensive teams, not just this year, but in decades. I mean,
Yeah.
in Duke, I mean, crazy what they did. So I'm very happy with how it turned out. And again, like those were we reaped the rewards of the lackluster first couple rounds. We got those Final Four matchups, and I think tonight should be super exciting. It's going to be a great one to watch.
So the big question is, who do you have to win it all?
I'm going with Houston. I'm going with Houston. I'm going
Okay.
with Kelvin Sampson. I think he is. I think the best player on the. It's hard because I think the best and electric player on the court is Walter Clayton Jr. And it's hard to bet against him. It really is, especially because Florida's been down big in their last two games, and he has simply put on his cape and said, "Don't we're not going to lose. I'm going to make something happen." But Houston, I think, is better coached and their style of play lends itself to they're going to be in the game basically no matter what, and as long as it's close at the end. I like Houston close at the end so much more because they do have that lockdown defense that just no one else can match up against.
Yeah, although I attend UC Santa Barbara, I am a big Kansas fan, so I won't be rooting for Houston as they are a Big 12 rival. I will be rooting for the Florida Gators, but
Okay.
I agree with you in terms of like the styles of play for the team. Houston, their offense thrives off of their great defense. The only way they can
Yeah.
make a good offensive stand is having a great defensive stand. Where Florida seems more of like a run and gun type of team. They want to get out running,
Mm,
they want to make these fast breaks. They don't want the defense to set up. But then
right.
they waste all their energy on the offensive side. Their defensive side is a little lackluster. As we've seen, they've been down big, but Walter Clayton Jr. has been lighting it up in that run and gun style of offense. So it's going to be interesting to see a really fast offense go up against a really great defense and an even slower offense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this is kind of the dream matchup a little bit, what you get. And I think it should be, I don't really have any rooting interests. I'm in a couple of March Madness pools, and if Duke had beat Houston, then I would really be rooting for Florida because I'd be able to finish pretty high in the pool.
Okay.
But alas, that's not happening now. So now I just get to root for a good game. Like I want last second, buzzer beater craziness. I want
We
a
it's
repeat
it's
of the Houston
yeah,
Duke game. Like that would be great.
yeah, we want another Villanova North Carolina where that buzzer beater by Villanova. We haven't seen that in so long. It'd be
Yeah,
so great to
especially in the
see.
finals. Oh, that'd be crazy. Yeah. But we do have, I mean, this tournament did give us some moments. I mean, just
Yeah.
the two Final Four games, Derek Queen in Maryland's buzzer beater, that was absolutely incredible. And yeah, I mean, even Arkansas's little run to the Final Four and those coaching matchups were so much fun. So it's been a good one, I think.
Yeah, and to transition from men's, let's go to women's. Women's, in terms of the March Madness tournament, is pretty predictable. The top seeds are usually the ones who are going to win. Very little upsets, but the top seeds are great. And speaking of top seeds, we saw that matchup yesterday afternoon with number two UConn going up against number one South Carolina. Last time these two teams faced was just a couple years ago in the finals, and UConn ended up losing. South Carolina ran away with it, but Gino Auriemma got his revenge and blew out Don Staley and the Gamecocks in South Carolina. And I'm a big UConn women's fan. I've always have been for as long as I can remember. I just love Gino and the Huskies and what he has going on with that program, the way he's developed Paige Beckers as a player, and it was just great to see UConn getting back into the winning column.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they are by far the most winningest program of women's college basketball history. It's pretty incredible what they've been able to do. And just, Becker's getting her championship after being hurt for so much of the
Yeah.
last couple of years, I think is awesome. And now she'll probably be the first overall pick in the draft. And her that draft class that she was in coming out of high school, I saw some tweet about it. It was her and Caitlin Clark was in that draft, and the top five prospects from that high school draft class now have the last five rings in women's basketball, which is pretty crazy. So good for them.
Yeah, and I mean, I honestly I thought Paige was gonna enter her name into the draft last year, but she shocked some people in wanting to stay, but rightfully so. And
Yeah, pays off.
if you think about it, I know Dan Hurley of the UConn's men's team said he denied or he rejected the Lakers' offer for head coach to go and three-peat. Although he didn't three-peat, UConn as a program, men's and women's, did three-peat.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
so Dan Hurley indirectly got what he wanted.
Yeah,
It's
I
just,
don't know. I mean, is the indirect championship worth the what $10 million less that he took going to UConn
I
to
don't
the
know. I
Lakers?
don't know. I mean, you be the judge of that one.
But it is they were a disappointment men's team
Oh
this
yeah.
year, which is a little upsetting. But he's a crazy controversial figure what he's done this year. But he's fun to watch. I mean, he's entertaining.
Oh yeah, he's you can just see the passion every time that they go out and
Oh yeah,
play. It's I mean, I know a lot of people dislike that in terms of what they want in a coach, but I played with coaches like that. Coaches who were gonna get under our skins, who were gonna yell at us, say negative things, but it was all for the love of the game. And one
yep,
of my travel ball coach actually said something that has stuck with me for a while. The second I stop yelling at you guys is the second I stop caring. And that's exactly what Dan Hurley is doing. He's
yeah.
yelling at his guys, he's getting under their skin, making them feel uncomfortable. But the second you see Dan Hurley stop that, you can tell that the passion is gone.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that's a good take. And there's so many different ways to coach, and there's so many different styles, right? But
Yeah,
that's one that has worked for a long time for a lot of different people. So it's hard to get mad at it.
yeah. Uh, so we talked about March Madness and NCAA. That's coming to a close today, as mentioned at 6 o'clock, Houston versus Florida. But let's transition into a different sport now. Let's talk a little bit about Major League Baseball. And Jake, I know you're a Yankees fan, and I think you can assume what I'm going to bring up right now. It's the torpedo bats. They've been
Yes,
very controversial in the last couple of weeks, but for those who don't know, torpedo bats have been in the game for a while. It's just no one's ever really thought to use them. But the Yankees brought in, I saw a report, they brought in some physicist to make the
yeah, from
perfect,
MIT,
yeah,
Lenny,
the
Lenny from
perfect,
MIT.
the perfect torpedo bat, which kind of started it all. But in my opinion, and I think Jake, you said this as well. If it was any other team but the Yankees, it wouldn't have made as big of headlines.
Yeah, sometimes it's times like these where, especially after a rough World Series that ended so tough, and everyone making fun of us in the off season.
Yeah,
It's times like these when you sit back and you think, yeah, we are still the Yankees. We do still carry that same weight, because if it's the Tigers who have torpedo bats and put up 20 runs in a game, literally it would not be a story. I don't know if you had one person talking about it, but it's the Yankees, and people want to be mad at the Yankees because
yeah,
they're the Yankees. So, but it is pretty funny. I mean, it really is a lot for absolutely nothing. Like, it's very cool. Like, the physicists coming in and they're making these bats, and what it takes is, like, each player, if you say, all right, you know what, like, I want to get fitted for a bat, it's genius. You go to this laboratory, you take 1,000 swings in a day, and then they model it all, and they say, all right, based on where you're swinging and how you're doing this, we're going to shape the bat this way. And it's completely legal, and it's the same thing as pitchers going into the lab and throwing 1,000 pitches in a day and saying, all right, hold the two seam like this instead of this for a moment. It's the exact same kind of
yeah.
thing. But because it's the Yankees, it was this whole big shenanigan. But I think it's long overdue, honestly, in baseball. I mean, for years we've heard about how pitchers have gotten better and better and better, and we've had to kind of make some rules now, whether it's banning the shift or this or that, about trying to help the hitters a little bit. It's about time that the hitters started helping themselves and using all the technology that's available to try and I think it works. Now, not every player likes the bats. Like,
Yeah.
Aaron Judge doesn't use it. He tried it. He's like, I don't like how it feels. It's not for me. And obviously, he's still the best hitter in baseball. But for other guys like an Anthony Volpe on the Yankees, who got jammed a lot last year and was a 80 OPS plus kind of hitter, well below league average, he's been fantastic so far. And there have been like 4 home runs that he's hit this year where he's gotten a little jammed, but it's just kept carrying because at least somewhat of the bat. So I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and it's also kind of a little bit of a bit of fresh air for the game of baseball. It's something fun. Obviously, it's people are talking about it in a negative way, and it's very controversial. But it brings new life to the game, and this is something I thought of yesterday. I told Charlie, who's someone at KCSB Sports. I don't remember if I told you. This might have been just something on a call, but since we have torpedo bats now, and they're pretty common now, or at least they're starting to be, think we see them in the All Star game?
Ooh, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I think it's just, if a player makes to the All Star game that uses that kind of bat, like it's and like a torpedo bat, like each one is pretty different
Yeah,
depending on the hitter. Like each torpedo bat is, widely different from one to another, which I feel like a lot of people have also not understood in these big media articles, which is silly. But yeah, I mean, I think we could totally see one there. That could be fun.
yeah, and there was another thing I brought up as well. You know, I think this is a bit of away from torpedo bats, but the All Star game really doesn't have any big connotations, right? It's just a game for fun. Obviously, they're trying, the East and the NL and the AL are trying to win. Personally, I think the MLB All Star Game is the most competitive All Star. I haven't
Totally.
watched the NHL All Star Game, but I heard that gets pretty. But from ones I've seen, by far the most competitive.
Yeah. Yeah.
But since this isn't a quote unquote real game, I would like to see composite bats being able to use or some metal
That
bats.
would be
That would
crazy.
be fun. Would that not be
That
fun?
that would be so much fun. I think player safety wise, might have to put a net in front of the pitcher. They'd be
Yeah.
terrified. I think standing facing a
Yeah.
metal bat. But I mean, just like a smaller scale, like the home run derby with metal bats, could be
Yeah.
so much fun. Like just to see how far they could go. I mean, you could imagine guys hitting 500, 600 foot
Oh
bombs
yeah.
with metal
Especially if
bats.
they play if the All Star game's in Colorado, like with the
Oh my God,
elevation,
yeah,
that's gonna
yeah,
fly.
yeah. That'd be pretty cool. I would totally enjoy that. And yeah, I think that's like I love that Paul Skeens started it last year, even though like whether obviously he was a rookie, he didn't necessarily have the reputation, but like he was such a buzzword in baseball, and he was such a great story. And it's like yes, that's what the All Star Game should be for. It should be getting new faces out, getting publicity, and they do absolutely take it seriously, especially the young guys. So I love it. I love trying new things for the All Star Game, and I do think baseballs works the best just because you can go pretty much 100% in baseball and not really risk injury like going 100% in football or basketball would risk injury.
Yeah. Um. No. We're talking about the All Star game, but the baseball season is only just about a couple weeks into the season right now. But I want to talk about some teams. I know it's still really early, but there's a couple teams that have caught my eye so far. One of them being the Atlanta Braves. They have not been doing too well recently. Have one or two wins so far on the
Yeah,
season.
1-8. One
Yeah,
and eight, not great.
like I said, it's really early, and it's still the Braves. So I'm hoping that they turn it around, but it's kind of weird to see the Braves that were once this World Series champion, competitor in their conference. They were always scary in the playoffs. To now be just a bottom of the barrel type of team.
Yeah, I mean, baseball is so funny because it is such an incredibly long season that, like, whenever something like this happens, you have to ask yourself, real. I think we're at that point yet. But a few more weeks of putrid play like they've got going on so far, then it becomes real. And the fact that you can start a conversation definitely says something. And I think there are some real worries for the Braves as an organization, just based on some of the things we've seen so far, just in terms of like their starting pitching is not going to be as good. Obviously, Max Fried, a Yankee now, is a huge loss, and they've lost a couple other pitchers. They've had a lot of injuries so far this year. So it's if I'm a Braves fan, am I thinking, oh no, we're not going to make the playoffs? I don't think so, not yet. But am I a little worried about what this could mean? Yeah, like definitely.
Yeah, and another team I wanted to talk about is a team that I support very heavily, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Uh, that's a shout out to everyone who lives in Orange County. I know they don't like the
Oh
name
yeah,
LA Angels, so I'll throw the Anaheim in there. Um, they've been doing pretty well so far. Like I mean, like I said, I sound like a broken record, but it's still really early. They were really great early on in the year last year until they had that, I believe, 15 or 17 game losing streak, something like that, and they were now fighting for a wild card spot that they didn't end up getting. But with Mike Trout back in the DH spot, Angels are looking good.
Yeah, no, I think it's if Mike Trout can stay healthy, that completely changes the outlook for that entire team because he's just that good. He really is. And, you know, they're so young and there's so much kind of volatility because of that, that if enough of those young guys have good years, you saw like with the Reds a couple years ago when they made a run at the wild card, kind of totally out of nowhere. They had like 4 or 5 rookies just all
Yeah.
have rookie of the year type seasons at once. Now, that happens very rarely, but it happens. So if the Angels get a couple guys like that, then you never know. Nolan Shanuel has been fantastic so far this year. Just as under the under the hood metrics of how hard he's hitting the ball, it's been really impressive to watch. For me, with the Angels, it's always come down to pitching,
Oh yeah.
because they've always been so incredibly bad at it, especially in the whole Mike Trout and then Shohei Ohtani era. It's just something that they've never been able to do very well. But it's promising so far, and I think the AL West is so much weaker now than it has been.
Yeah.
The Rangers could definitely make some noise, but the Astros definitely don't scare me anymore. The Mariners really don't scare me, and obviously the A's are the A's. So there's no reason why you can't make some noise in that division and at least be a competitive team.
Yeah, I mean, you say the Astros don't scare you, but I mean, as an Angels fan, the Astros are still going to be the Astros. The Rangers are
Mm-hmm.
still going to be the Rangers. Like they're going to give the Angels a bit of trouble, but yeah, they're not as good as they used to be. The Rangers had a bit of a fall off since they won the World Series against the Diamondbacks. Astros have had a bit of a fall off. It's the AL West, like you said, is not as competitive as it once was, even know. So the Angels really do have a chance, and I really like the signings that they made in the offseason. I kind of called it the Atlanta Braves retirement home since we got Jorge Soler, Travis d'Arnaud, um, but I mean, they've been doing all right. We got Kenley Jansen as a closer now. I know a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people, some people who didn't like that signing because he is so old now, but Kenley is still going to go out there and perform. Tyler
Yeah.
Anderson is, doing decently well. Still have Ben Joyce out there. Lost a couple guys last year at the trade deadline, but so far everything seems to be doing.
Yeah, no, I mean, and they have a lot of guys who are like, maybe they are bounce back type players. It's funny to have, Yohan Moncada and Tim
Yeah,
Anderson, former like studs on the White Sox who were so bad, but like kind of like a why not type year for a lot of the guys on this team. And while that's scary because it could go bad it could go pretty bad pretty quickly, it could also, there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of guys on the team who were good at some point in their major league career, or great at some point in their major league career. So if enough of them put it together, they can do it. Again, I'm it's a rotation that still scares me. Right now, it's Kikuchi, Soriano, uh, Kashawnowitz, who I have not heard of, I got to admit, Anderson and Kyle Hendricks, which is, you have 3 guys who are over 34 in that rotation, which is pretty old. Um, I'm worried about the injury bug with
yeah,
that, but guys who can at the very least give you, you don't have an ace or anything, but I think you have a lot of number 3 guys, which over the course of a regular season can definitely get you a lot of wins.
yeah. I mean, you mentioned Kikuchi, who is someone that I forgot to mention, and Kyle Hendricks. It's other guys who are aging but have proved their worth. They may have not had the best last couple of seasons, but they can still go out there and perform for you.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I think I'd be cautiously optimistic
That's what
as
I've been
as someone
saying.
who's got some angel stock. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been saying that since spring training. Spring training they look great, and I was like, okay, they're actually pretty good, but I'm gonna say cautiously optimistic because it's still the
Mhm.
Angels.
Yeah, exactly. They feel cursed.
Yeah, and I think well, I wasn't gonna say this, but it's a fan podcast. I don't think I'm gonna get sued or anything. It's Art Moreno. I think every Angel fan can agree that until Art Moreno sells the team, this team is gonna be cursed. He owns it. It's just one of
Yeah,
those. It's one situation.
that's fair. That's fair. I have nothing against that.
Um, let one last thing in Major League Baseball made headlines last night. I don't know if you saw. I'm assuming you saw. Vladimir Guerrero got a huge deal to stay with the Blue Jays in Toronto. 14 years, 500 million, about 35 million a year. And one thing that I saw, there's no deferrals. So he will
Hmm.
be making all that money over the course of the year, unlike Shohei Ohtani, got like 99% of his contract deferred to the end.
Yeah, I think that's the really interesting part. I'm pretty surprised. I thought the Blue Jays were very close to blowing everything up. I think if Vlad hadn't wanted this deal, if he wanted to push things to free agency and was set on doing that, I think they blow up the entire team this year by the trade deadline. But him staying changes the outlook of the entire franchise. At least in the near future for them, because now the goal is to retain everybody that they can and build instead of doing the exact opposite. But I I think for a first base DH type, that's a lot of money. I think to
Yeah,
shell out 500 again, he could be, he has at times been a top three hitter in baseball. He's been up and down. He's been inconsistent over his career. He's had some bad years. But when you look, once he hit age 22, because again, he started when he was just so incredibly young. Once he hits 22, he's like 23, age 22, 23, 24 seasons, average out to be a pretty incredible baseball player. But, you know, 15, God, 14 years is a long time. It's a
yeah,
really long time for someone who is not a great first baseman. So
yeah.
that was the biggest concern with like a Juan Soto type. I think he's different because he's just that much better of a hitter than Vlad. But I think that's probably the comparison you make in terms of just guys who got really long term contracts but still project as a DH. Um, but yeah, I'd be scared to give a future DH who's been inconsistent at times in his career $500 million. But I think if you're the Blue Jays, I don't know, maybe you had to.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned blowing everything up. I honestly thought Vlad was going to be gone. It
Yeah,
seemed like some mulling over the last couple of years that Vlad was unhappy in Toronto, that they weren't winning. He was probably going to test the market, possibility of him coming back. But now with this deal that's been inked, he's there for the long haul. But the Blue Jays are still not that great of a team. They're not really contenders, but they're also not bottom of the barrel. It's a weird kind of
yeah,
limbo. So I don't know where you go from here.
yeah. No, I agree. And they've been, in this limbo for years now. I mean, they brought up that core with Vlad and Biggio and Bichette all at the same time, and it was like, all right, this is the next super team. They lose in the wild card, and they say, that was just a preview. Wait for the movie, and they've gotten worse every single year since. I think
Yeah,
four in a
pretty
row
bad
now.
movie.
Yeah, pretty bad movie.
Pretty.
So I mean, obviously as a Yankees fan, I love it. I think they were way too cocky at first, and they just have never lived up to the hype. But I do think now you can kind of change your window a little bit. Now it's okay. We don't have to, keep everything together because this is our last dance, and maybe it'll all come together right now. Now that you know that you have Vlad for a very extended future, you can say maybe we can try and change up the formula a little bit, build a new core around him, and you still have time to do that because he's so young. So I do think it's probably in the franchise's best interest to have a very different look, because what they have been doing just is not good enough. And I mean, they don't strike any fear in you. They get Jose Barrios a couple of years ago, Kevin Gosman, and Chris Bassett. Oh, okay, maybe, and they've all just really underperformed since they've gotten to Toronto, and with kind of that young core totally falling apart. It doesn't make you feel great about the lineup. They got, Anthony Santander this past offseason, which move I liked, I didn't love, but I don't think nothing's moved the needle for this franchise in years.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be an interesting team to watch at the trade deadline. I mean,
Yeah.
are they going to be a team that shops and tries to get some win now pieces, or are they going to stay set? Are they going to maybe this Vlad deal was to set up the future? Maybe they're going to
Yeah.
get some young guys, and in 3 4 years they become a contender.
It totally could be that. I mean, right now they're sitting at 5-5, obviously very early, but my gut is that they are a 500 team the whole year, which is the worst case scenario if you're talking trade deadline, right? Like,
Yeah.
do you go all in for this year, and so you try and get yourself an extra 5 wins, and then are a wild card team? Do you do the exact opposite? It feels like you really can't just stay put and be a 500 team like you have been.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what happened to the Angels a
Yep.
couple years ago. They were they had that big losing streak. They fired Joe Madden, their manager, and they were at the trade deadline and they were fighting for a wild card spot. So people were saying, are they trading Otani now? Are they going to win now? And they were put in a win now position. They made some pretty decent trades that helped them slightly, but they ended up falling short of the wild card. Otani still ended up leaving. They got nothing out of it, and now
Yeah.
they're back to square one. But they're doing okay. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Blue Jays follow suit in that department.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can look at the Angels and as a great what not to do,
Yeah,
honestly, as though the exact wrong blueprint. Let's try and do the opposite of that. Um, I yeah, they're in a sticky spot, but I think knowing that at the very least, it's not like they're gonna say goodbye to Vlad and let him walk away for nothing. They know that's not a possibility anymore. So that's gotta kind of settle yourself a little bit as a Blue Jays fan.
yeah. Let's move on now to another sport, NBA. Jake, I know you're not as big of an adamant, at you're not that big of a NBA viewer. You're more of a baseball guy, but
Sure,
I'm the bigger NBA guy. I think between the two of us, I know
definitely.
Mac has mentioned it at meetings. I will die for the Lakers. Mac being the director of KCSB Sports. I mean, he's right. I will die for that team. I will argue anybody about the Lakers any day of the week, but I'm not one of those like delusions. I know bad, but right now Lakers are good in what I'm deeming the wild wild west because it is very wild
Unreal.
bringing up the standings. The eighth seed and the third seed, eighth seed being the Grizzlies, Lakers at 3, are separated by just 2 games. The fifth and the eighth seed are tied. Nuggets are half a game ahead of the fifth seed. Anything can happen. I mean, the Clippers jumped from seventh to fifth just last night. Just crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts. I mean, and what? There's only 4 games left,
Yeah,
pretty much.
yeah, 4 games.
Wow, wow. So like, you're probably a week away, like two more games from now, and you think it should be a little bit more settled, but they're all so close together, and like these teams are all pretty evenly matched. Like they're similar records for a reason. So just like the matchups and having home court advantage, like could be the difference in the 7 game playoff series. So it's pretty important. Like you hope that the dominoes fall and you're one of those top 2 teams out of this mess of 6. But it's so up in the air right now, but really exciting.
Yeah, and I just want to read off a tweet from Mike Trudell, who's a reporter for Spectrum Sportsnet. He's been there forever. Lakers fans love him. They know him very well. He mentioned a tiebreaker scenario that could happen. So, these are in the final 4 games. All the Lakers have to do is win 2. They win 2 out of 4, they lock in the 3 seed. But
Okay.
if something happens where they don't and they only win 1 game, a weird scenario can happen with a multi-team tiebreaker. If Minnesota finishes 4-0, Nuggets 3-0, Minnesota will get the 3 seed on a 6-2 record in the 3-team hypothetical tie, Lakers would get the 4 seed, Denver at 5.
Oh my gosh, that'd be crazy. It's
That's
insane that there's still so like normally this doesn't happen with like at this
yeah,
much of a
this
level.
this late in the year, it never happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And now, like, I think one of the things that sometimes rubs me the wrong way about the NBA is that a lot of times the regular season isn't taken quite as seriously, especially towards the end when things are locked up. But you have to take it seriously now because
Yeah.
there's so much seeding thing going on all the way to the very end, which I think makes it so much more exciting. And it's just awesome. But so Angel, as a Lakers fan, what they got the Thunder, the Mavericks, the Rockets, the Trailblazers. Do you feel pretty confident that they get 2 wins and they lock up the 3 seed? You're feeling good about that or no?
I mean, I they're guaranteed to win against the Trailblazers. The Mavericks feel I'm very confident that we can beat the Mavericks.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think we get our 2 wins there. The Thunder and the Rockets, though, is going to be kind of iffy. We beat the Thunder in stellar fashion. Both teams were healthy, but I mean, it's still the Thunder. The Thunder are a great kind of small ball team. They run quick. They're the best team in the NBA by far at 64 wins. I get the Cavs are close behind them at 62, but the Thunder just feel more complete. But the Rockets, I think the Rockets are kind of the outlier for me. I think they could lose in a 7 game series in the first or second round. Thunder have a bit better of a chance in my eyes
Mm,
to compete.
yeah.
But if
And
I'm
I mean,
go ahead.
yeah, I mean, the Rockets are still only 3 games, 3.5 games ahead of the Lakers. Like, there's not that much that separates those two
Yeah.
teams. And then what? So they're only 5 games ahead of the 8 seed, which is insane that the 2 and the 8 are that right. We're talking 3 and the 8, but the 2 and the 8 are not that far
Yeah.
apart either.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, you just mentioned the Lakers are only 3.5 games behind. I mean, if the Rockets lose out and the Lakers win out, Lakers could somehow jump up to the 2 seed.
That's true.
I mean, there's so much movement. The East, and then you look at the East. The East is locked up for not only the locked-in playoff spots 1 through 6, the play-in tournament 7 through 10. The
Yeah.
West, they're still. I mean, even the play-in teams aren't confirmed yet because the Suns, they can win out. Mavericks or Kings could lose out. The Suns would be in the play-in. So I mean, we're looking not only at just the 3 through 8. You got to look at 2 through 11, and there's only
I mean,
four
it
games
really is pretty
left.
wild. I mean, that's insane. And I don't know, like, I feel like it's been a long time now that the West has just had better teams top to
Oh
bottom,
yeah,
like as a whole than the East. And I mean, this year, right, the Grizzlies, the 8 seed, 46 wins, they'd be 1 game behind the 4 seed Pacers in the East. It's pretty like, and it feels like it's this way every single year. It's
yeah,
just like wild how the conferences have become so completely imbalanced over the last decade or so.
yeah. I mean, it's really interesting to see. I think it all kind of started when LeBron went to the Lakers. That kind of
Mm.
started everything. They got him. Anthony Davis got traded there, and then what I call the dynamic duo summer happened. Had Kawhi and PG go to the Clippers. You had Harden and Russell Westbrook pair up with the Rockets. So all these teams started to kind of come together and say, look, we need at least 2 superstars to compete. The West did it, but the East just seemed to stick with their role players. The Celtics
Yeah.
obviously have a star-studded cast with Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, Derek White, Drew Holiday, and the rest of the gang. But the East just seems like teams that are filled with role players, where the
Mm.
West has that star-studded top 2 or 3, and then they fizzle out.
So do you think that's like a huge advantage for like come playoff time where the top teams in the East, whether it's the Cavs or the Celtics, they have just a much easier road to the finals where they get there maybe healthier, they haven't had to play as many games. Like, is that you think that's just a giant advantage for them, or maybe not so much because it's still the playoffs, still have to play hard.
Well, I mean, we saw exactly that last year. The Celtics were going up against these role-playing teams. They played the Heat, and I believe they played the Pacers and the Bucks in the conference finals. Or I think it was the Knicks. Not saying the Knicks are a role-playing team. They're pretty good as well. Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, all of them. But the Celtics had a pretty easy walk to the finals, going up against Jimmy Heat or Jimmy Butler and who else? Bam. Bam was okay.
Mhm.
Tyler wasn't having that good of a season. I think they played the Pacers. Who do they have? Tyrese Halliburton,
Right.
Pascal Siakam, who was doing okay. You go to the Knicks, you lock down Jalen Brunson. Who do they have? No one. So it was, it's kind of an easy road to the finals if you're a star-studded team in the East, as opposed to the West. Can be a star-studded team like the Lakers or the Nuggets, the Warriors, and you're still gonna struggle. I mean, the Warriors right now, they're sixth. They're
Yeah,
uh,
that's pretty well. Wow. So right now it'd be Lakers and Warriors
which
round
I
one.
don't like. as
Yeah, no,
as
that that'd be fun. That'd be fun for the fan, though. I'll tell you.
Oh yeah, a LeBron Curry playoff matchup. I think everyone would want that, especially this late in their career. But it
Hmm.
was only a few weeks ago. Someone online asked me, if I was what I want in the playoffs, because at the time the Lakers were the 4 seed, Grizzlies were 5, Nuggets were 3, and I was asked who would I rather have? Would I rather have the Nuggets, the Grizzlies, or the Warriors were 6 as well? And I said the Grizzlies. And at that point, I thought it was pretty much a lock. Those top teams are going to kind of hover around that area. But now, I mean, the Lakers are looking at playing the Warriors. Nuggets are going to host the Clippers. Rockets playing the Timberwolves, and the Thunder playing the Grizzlies if everything stays. If
Yeah,
those top,
no, that'd be interesting.
because I don't think the Kings and the Mavericks are going to win the play-in tournament. I think
No, yeah.
the Timberwolves and the
It seems like
Grizzlies are
there's a
far better.
clear top eight. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, you look at the East in terms of the play-in tournament. Magic Hawks, Magic are going to win that one. Bulls Heat, I assume the Heat. I don't know actually. That one's going to be interesting. I think the Bulls are going to win that one. But then
mm,
we would have what the NBA community is saying, the annual mid off with the Hawks and the Bulls. We see it every year since the play-in tournament. I think the Hawks have played the Bulls.
yeah. I think so. And
That's
then whoever wins that will just get destroyed by the Cavs.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, oh my
yeah.
God.
I mean, I think the Bulls have a good shot at winning a play-in game and getting into the playoffs, but are they good enough to beat the Cavs now? Are the
No,
Magic good enough to beat the Celtics now? Are the Pistons good enough to beat the Knicks? Maybe. And then Bucks and Pacers, that's a toss-up.
yeah,
But the West,
it'll be fun.
it's like everyone can beat anybody at this point.
Yeah,
It's just a matter of, like you said, home court.
nothing
Who
would
has home
surprise
court?
me. Yeah, yeah. That could prove to be the difference, which is hysterical because it's like who has home court right now is so totally up in the air.
Yeah, and I was also talking to that same person online, and they're a Nuggets fan, and they don't think that the Nuggets are true contenders this year. I mean, they haven't. They feel to me the Nuggets are what the Chiefs were this year. The
Interesting.
the Chiefs, yes, they're really great in the regular season. They're probably going to do great in the first few rounds of the playoffs, but once the lights are the brightest, they're going to fold.
Interesting.
That's what I
Yeah, I
think's
mean,
going to
I think
happen.
right, and it's hard to bet against them because they have probably possibly the best player in the entire sport.
Yeah.
But that might not be enough. All right, I don't hate that analogy.
Yeah, so we'll see. Playoffs are around the corner. Play-in starts in exactly 1 week, I believe,
Wow.
next Tuesday. So it's going to be fun to watch. But I don't have too much to talk about in terms of the remainder of this podcast. But I just want to give a big congratulations to Alexander Ovechkin of the Washington Capitals, beating out Wayne Gretzky's goal record just the other night. I know he's probably never going to hear this, but as a sports fan, you got to tip your cap to one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really cool to they shook hands after this. I mean, just like such class from Gretzky, like passing it down. How all sports records should be like this, right? We've seen the exact opposite from that from the NBA community of
Yeah,
late. People trying to hate on modern day players. But it's exactly what it should be, where a great passes it down to another, and it should be a celebration. That's what it's felt like, a total celebration of hockey greatness the last month or so.
yeah. I mean, you mentioned the NBA. I mean, look at what happened when LeBron passed Kareem in all-time
Yeah,
regular season scoring. they shook hands and they had a ceremony, which was cool. But then go to the NBA community, and they're saying, this is, LeBron's still not the greatest, even though he has all these records. He just passed 50,000 points in his career about a month ago in regular season and playoffs. Yet people still think there's a clear cut, greatest of all time. But that proves, in my opinion, I'm not gonna sit here and argue who's the GOAT and who's not. I'm a greatest of the era type of person, but
Okay.
it should not be as clear cut as people are saying. I think there's
No, I
an
agree.
argument to be had with Braun, Michael Jordan, and even guys like Kobe, Shaq. They should all still be in the conversation as well.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, I think it is like one thing to just say, like just to celebrate when something awesome happens or when a crazy record like this is broken. I think hockey media has done a fantastic job of that, whereas NBA media is typically very, very poor at
Yeah,
doing that same thing,
yeah.
which is hurting the game. I think
Oh yeah,
pretty
totally.
clearly.
Totally. I mean,
Yeah,
NBA social media, it's just a community.
yeah.
They've been growing very toxic as of late, and yeah, it's definitely hurting
Yeah.
the sport.
And I mean, you look at like women's basketball and college basketball, all the numbers are as high as they have ever been in terms of people watching and interacting. And it's, it's just as much excitement there as ever before. So it really is just an NBA specific problem, not a basketball problem.
Yeah. Well, I think that is going to be it for this episode 7 of the Beyond the Sideline podcast. Jake, thank you so much for coming back on again. Do you have any closing remarks for the people?
Excited to be back. It'll be less hectic from this point forward, which I'm
We
excited
hope. We
about.
hope.
Fewer crazy breaks, yeah, theoretically. But yeah, good to be back. Go Yankees. Happy that baseball is back.
And with that, I have one thing less to say. Left to say, I'm going to quote the great Shannon Sharp. He came out with a new Lakers in 5. He said, Divorce Court, Supreme Court, Lou Dort. Lakers in 5. And with that, that is going to be the end of the Beyond the Sideline podcast. I appreciate everyone who has listened. Like Jake said, hoping things will be less hectic. Try to have a little more consistency in terms of the schedule. Episodes will still come out at Friday at 2 p.m. no matter when we record, because right now it's Monday in the afternoon. So by the time you hear this, it will have been a few days since we've talked about all these topics. So we will obviously see the NBA standings unfold in terms of the West, things like the MLB, how teams are shaping up then. But like I mentioned, thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you back in the next episode.